Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last full session of the conference. After this, we've got our little bit of a break, and then we've got a keynote, and then we wrap everything up with our closing and our giveaways. I think it's been a great conference. Everybody seems to be very happy with the content, and this new platform seemed to work pretty well, and I'm very pleased with the way things are going. But today I wanted to bring before you here Classlink. Classlink is our sponsor of this session, and with us today we're going to have three school districts. We've got Corvallis with Gil, we've got Federal Way with Tim, and we have Highline with Becky. Of course, I'm with Highline as well, but Becky is leading this session. And I really want to say this is going to be a practical session. It means what they're going to be talking about is the operation. There's going to be a few slides here at the beginning, but you're very encouraged to use that conversation window and to click inside there and enter in comments inside the chat and questions in the Q&A. And the presenters and the panelists are going to be moving around between those. They might be answering those inside that session, and if they don't, if you want to raise your hand, I have the ability to see raised hands, and I can promote you up to the screen so that you get an opportunity to be on screen and ask your question. So with no further ado, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can begin the session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. And we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody today. And we thank you for carving out an hour or so of your day to spend with us. Mark made an introduction already, but we're very thrilled for the three school districts to join us today: Highline, Corvallis, and Federal Way. And again, we thank you so much for doing that. We wanted this session to be a little bit different than your normal kind of set and get or kind of content presentation. So we really envision this being a roundtable discussion, a big conversation, if you will. So we really do encourage you to submit your questions, raise your hand, we'll bring you up. You can ask your question of the panelists, but we really want this to be an interactive session over the next hour or so. Let me just kind of go through a rough agenda of what we have in mind. So we're going to do a round of introductions, and then we're going to have a discussion item of the group. Then we're going to talk a little bit about district overview from a Classlink perspective, and then we're going to wrap it up with some specific questions in our roundtable discussion. So again, very interactive, very conversational, and we're looking forward to a great session. So let me start off by a round of introductions. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around with our panelists and tell us your name and your school district, your role. I know everybody's title, but I know the role and the title sometimes are different. And then your years of experience. And I'll go ahead and kick us off. My name is Doug Nimmo, and I am a regional vice president here on the Classlink team. And I wear multiple hats here at Classlink. I work with our sales team and with our team in the Northwest. And I facilitate what we call our focus groups, and I get to lead conference presentations, and I wear a number of different hats here at the company. I've been with Classlink for about 4.5 years, going on 5, and I've been in education technology for about 17, which is sometimes scary to say. So that's a little bit about me. And what I'll do is I'll just go by the names on the screen. And Brian, I've got you up first, if you don't mind.
All right, thanks. Yeah, my name is Brian Shaffield. I work with the Corvallis School District in Corvallis, Oregon. I'm the data integration and systems analyst here. A little bit of my background, I was a bilingual teacher for 5 years in Independence, Oregon. So I've had some classroom experience, and then I worked as a district school building technician for about 3.5 years, and then moved to the district office and jumped a couple of roles: systems manager, working with our systems team, and then into this role with data integration and getting it all to work together. So that's
awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, since about 2019.
Thank you for sharing, Brian. Mm-hmm. Gil, you're up next.
Thanks, Doug. I'm Gil Ansbacher, Director of Technology Services in Corvallis School District. I've been in the district for 3 years. In fact, I think I may have just crossed my 3-year anniversary a few days ago. I have to look back on my calendar. It's been an awesome 3 years. And I've been in education for somewhere around 25 years. And a lot of that has had technology somewhere in it. I started out in the classroom and then moved into technology administration. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gil. Tim.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for joining the session. My name is Tim Crawford. I'm the Executive Director for Information Technology Services in Federal Way. I have been with Federal Way for 22 years, and I've had 7 different positions in the department, and currently leading the team until we have a new incoming CTO coming in the end of June.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Becky?
Hey there, I'm Becky Mesker. I'm part of Highline Public Schools. I'm the project manager of IT, so I helped facilitate the rollout of Classlink at Highline during the summer of COVID.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Becky. Mark, are you still with us, I think? I think Mark might be gone. And then who do I leave? Katie. How about Katie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Lexon, Director of Data Integration and Visualization here at Highline Public Schools. I've been here this time about 13 years. I worked here previously and left for a while and came back. And I work closely with Becky, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I appreciate that. We get to know one another a little bit and kind of what our roles are within our individual school districts. So I'd like to start off now by going through a discussion item. I'd like to hear from each district if possible. This is a very open-ended question on purpose, and it could look differently at each one. But how has technology impacted student engagement during this last year, almost going on a year and a half now, of remote and blended learning? So I'd like to go around and hear from each district and talk to us about how technology has impacted student engagement. So if you don't mind, I'll ask the Corvallis team to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I think impacted, I might even shift that just to enabled, right? Yeah. Without it, we wouldn't have had any engagement. And I'll never forget the day in March of 2020, and I can't remember when it was, but I can remember the moment when I was in our assistant superintendent's office, and our superintendent walked through the door, and we all know the freight train that was coming. And he said, "So, how ready are we to do education at home, like tomorrow?" Right? And I was like, okay, I went through the checklist. Like, we got Classlink, we got devices, we got this. We're good. We just need some process, right? So, technology to me has just enabled that student engagement. But the piece that we found is there's levels of student engagement that have risen to the surface that maybe weren't there in the past with the tools of technology that we were using. And what I've seen and heard about is students being able to step into engagement in new modalities, new ways that maybe they couldn't in the in-person classroom. So there's been definitely some positive pieces there, and we know that we're missing the in-person piece. So I'm looking forward to when that all is back together.
Gil, to follow up on that, were you one-to-one before COVID, or did you have to accelerate any kind of device deployment during those first couple of months?
Yeah, we were a little unique in that we were one-to-one take-home in middle school. Okay. Our elementary schools and our high schools were in a cart model, but we had enough devices for each student. So what that meant was spring break 2020 was our entire team breaking down device carts. But we were super fortunate that we had enough devices and we had the systems there to make it happen.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug.
Tim, how about you? How did technology impact student engagement during COVID, for that matter?
Yeah, I would Yeah, so in Federal Way, we were not a one-to-one district. We were cart-based across the district, and we probably were close to 3-to-1 on quantities. And so when we started in March of 2020, we passed out what we could to the students that we could, but we didn't have enough for everyone that had a need. So there was a lot of purchasing last year. And so I think for our impact, we went from kind of a partial use of technology from kids that would have used roving carts and a few different things to definitely being an integral part of their learning and their learning process. We were not on Classlink a year ago, but we had already been in the implementation timeline. And so that did speed up what we did last spring and summer so that we could bring a number of resources up as our central single sign-on platform in September. And that part definitely made a huge impact that we were not able to do back in the March timeframe. So this school year, it was all about expanding systems and how do we maintain and support all of our students and families wherever they were calling in from a relative's house, from their own house.
I think we may have lost Tim there. Well, let's see if he comes back. Tim, are you back with us?
Yep, sorry about that, just dropped off.
Okay, perfect. I think Tim may be having some trouble. Let's move to the Highline team. How has technology impacted student engagement over the last year or so?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. We were similar to the other districts. We were one-to-one in middle school, but not fully one-to-one school-wide. So it really transformed how teachers were teaching, of course. I mean, everybody went virtual. But the most interesting thing was it really showed, one, which schools had already been doing a lot of digital literacy and embedding technologies and which weren't. And so we could see those inequities. And then also, student learning preferences. Some students really took this and ran with it and did better virtual than they did in person, while other students who need the unique connection, those conversations struggled. So it actually prompted us, we're opening a full virtual academy this year because we had so much feedback from a lot of students really benefiting from that model. But of course, not all, right? So we also push for that hybrid to come back to school for those kids. So yeah, it's been interesting to see the different levels of engagement across schools due to how they implemented things and some holes we needed to fill and things like that.
Makes sense. Thank you, Becky. I'm curious, I didn't hear anybody say this, and hopefully it wasn't an issue, but did anybody have any infrastructure challenges during this time? I know that was one thing that we heard quite a bit was, we scrambled to get hotspots out. We have some cohorts of our population that, didn't have access to good internet, if you will. Did any of the districts struggle with that at all? Becky, I see you're nodding your head a little bit.
Yeah, that was huge. We're, I think, 80% free and reduced lunch. I mean, we have kids who don't have access at all. So really Mark led the charge on that scrambling. I mean, we had hotspots already through Sprint 1 million, but we live by the airport in a very hilly area. So there's lots of dead spots. So we had to get different brands of hotspots. And then eventually what Mark was able to do for us was work with Comcast to get a low rate internet connection, and some we were able to cover through our Highline Schools Foundation. But I mean, we were still, in some cases, trying to get students connected 2 months after school started. I mean, it was really impactful and concerning for sure.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing that, Becky.
And
okay.
This is Tim. I just would reiterate the same thing from Highline, where we were still spending many of those fall months still trying to get scholars connected. And we did have to swap out different hotspots because of areas that just didn't have coverage. And so we did purchase from 2 different cellular providers for that reason. And then again, using the OSPI vouchers for the Comcast Internet Essentials.
Sure.
And one thing to add there, Doug, as you asked, infrastructure challenges, obviously a lot of the internal infrastructure challenges disappeared, right? Because nobody was here. But one of the pieces there for us was we were routing our web content filtering back through an on-prem filtering appliance, which worked fine at the numbers we had of one-to-one only in our middle schools. Now, when it went to K-12, all of a sudden we had a major capacity constraint on our hands that we had to address pretty quickly. So that was one of the challenges that, it's coming, but you don't quite know what the volume's going to be until people get out there and really get active on their devices. And one of the things that did is just moved us over to a cloud filtering solution. And we let that capacity constraint be their challenge instead of ours.
Yeah, I've heard that before as well. So thanks, folks, for sharing that. I mean, that's I always like to hear different experiences about how technology's impacted engagement and other things along the way. And I think what we've found out is this has accelerated some of the planning that we've done. And I think we're going to come out of this hopefully sooner rather than later in a much better place. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I think at this point we'll pivot, and I'm going to turn it over to Kate to kind of lead us in a discussion on some of the specific journeys of the school districts. And I think we'll start with Federal Way. So Kate, if you don't mind, you want to take it away?
Happy to. Although, if I may pause for a second, I see that Adam mentioned that North Shore did in the comments. And I believe that we can, if you want to speak out loud to your challenges, I'm happy to give you the floor for a few minutes. So you can just respond in the chat if you want to. We do want people to be able to talk. So don't be scared to say, hey, give me the mic for a second. Okay, so Doug didn't let Anu and I introduce ourselves. So I will, for those of you who don't know me, I am Kate Anasterio, and I'm the Vice President of Educational Success for Classlink, and I oversee our implementations, and I was the project manager on the Highline project and the Corvallis project. So I'm in the weeds here. So, okay, as Doug laid out, we like people to be able to share any components of their Classlink journey that they think would be useful for the audience and useful from a learning standpoint. Anu did a little pre-work and asked some questions, and so we grabbed some bullets. You can ignore these bullets, you can speak to them, but Federal Way, do you want to talk a little bit about your Classlink journey?
Thanks. So one of the things that we started doing at a systems level a year ago was just looking through the plan as they were trying to working with teaching for learning of what that was going to look like. And so they came up with what they called a continuous learning plan, and had a lot of aspects about what is the role of the teacher and the support staff and the specialist, and the role of the family and the role of the scholar. And so as we were talking through, there was things that they were talking about doing a year ago that we just didn't have those type of pieces in place. And so we didn't want to put 18 different links into this continuous learning plan that would get kids to all these different locations. Here's the link to Canvas, here's the link to other resources. And so that's where Launchpad came in as our single point of access, and we were able to broadcast that to say, here is your website, and that's learn.fwps.org. Launchpad to Learning is what we were branding it in our district. And so we utilized that as the spot where they would go. They would get their Canvas links there. They would get their Zoom links there. They would have access to all their assessments. And so we knew that was the source that we wanted to get everyone to. And that we would also, I'll mention that we are also using that to pull attendance for all the asynchronous days as they logged in to Classlink. And so a couple things we did is we did do a number of communication actions plans that would get that information out to families. And the first couple of days of school, like many districts did, we had school sessions where they were doing online orientation. And so we followed that up with online family webinars. So they walked through, here's the steps, how to get into Launchpad and to do the things they needed to. And then also, like many school districts, we follow that up with a parent portal that would just be a one-spot location where parents get information about logging in, Zoom tutorials, how to get to the student information system through Launchpad, and a number of those items. So I think what worked well for us is to have that central point of access, and that we were able to utilize that for multiple aspects. Soon after school started, using Zoom very robustly, we started having a lot of issues and Zoom bombings. And so we worked with Zoom and Classlink support and turned on Zoom authentication through Classlink. So that was one more tool that we used to restrict Zoom down to current students in their current classes using their Launchpad credentials. And that definitely helped with our engagement and disengagement.
I want to follow up with one piece of that, because I heard a lot of people talking about the potential of using Launchpad for attendance. Is there anything about that? How were you able to do that? How was that accepted?
So we wanted a way to track students' use of technology, and we have on Wednesdays, which is our asynchronous days, and so we set up scripts to pull Classlink logs on an hourly basis into a temporary database, and then that gets populated into our student information system, and so that runs on a daily basis. So that it shows up in their attendance. If they weren't in person, it did show up for asynchronous and recorded engagement.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad I asked. I might be sending some customers to talk to you, Tim. That's a question we get asked a lot, and sounds like you have it pretty well mastered. Does anyone have any questions for Federal Way while we're right here? Okay. Doug, do you want to move on to the next slide? Okay, Corvallis. I know we've got Gil and Brian here, so we've kind of got strategic and tactical covered. So I will leave it to you gentlemen to talk about your journey.
Thanks, Kate. So I'll start a little bit on the strategic side of things. And one, I just got to say it, like, I don't know how we would have done it through COVID without Classlink and without someone awesome like Brian in the role of data integration. I'm just the pace of movement of, we need Canvas in 2 weeks. Can you do that? And can you have it all rostered based on the classes and SIS and ready to go by Monday? It's like, sure, why not? We got Classlink, no problem. We got Brian, we can do this, all right? And it was all a little bit bigger than that, but fortunately, this was something that we had started working on way before. I started in Corvallis in 2018-19 school year, started actually May 2018, and started asking questions about what was needed. And one of the big pieces I found from our teaching and learning department was we didn't have a systematic approach to rostering and learning apps. And it was a major pain point across the district, and it really impacted student access to learning. We were on devices at that time everywhere except for our high schools, wide range of applications. And what I was asked by teaching and learning, like, can you just solve this problem? And it was very technical. And, I said, yeah, I know a tool for this. And at the same time, we were in the middle of doing some department restructure as well. We didn't quite have the capacity there to do the work. So we had a number of moving pieces at one time. And alongside this, I saw the greater need around access and student engagement alongside a need for behind the scenes identity or account management. So I had done research and work around Classlink at my previous district, knew some of the challenges that we'd be facing in that our ESD was using Classlink as a staff access tool to the SIS that they use. So they had their own instance of Classlink, and Kate and I became best friends through that process, trying to solve one of probably the more complicated puzzles out there. And
He's not joking. We're tight. We're tight.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and I really appreciate your adaptability there, Kate, and working with your team to come up with a solution there. That really helped us get there. And so in summer 2019, we rolled out Classlink. Brian stepped into his role in our systems team, and our data integration side, implementing Classlink. And I would say that and then further on in our technical journey, summer 2020, we rolled out the OneSync side of Classlink for Active Directory account management and groups management. And that, for us, had moved from a PowerShell script that was pretty fragile to a really robust solution. And Brian will talk about this a little bit more. It's been a huge win for us, and it all is in the background, so that now, office managers out in buildings, teachers know that when a student lands in SIS, their account's going to show up and they'll have their learning app, and it's just magic. And that's been a really big piece. The piece in our journey that I would share, that if I had it to do over again, was making sure that the instructional side really sees this piece, that Classlink is much more than a rostering tool, that it is this platform for access, and that there is this teacher component to it. That to me is the big one, of understanding the why behind this and what's coming, because it's so powerful. And so that's the work that we're stepping into now, is that layering on of the engagement and the access, and the teachers being able to step in and drive in this process. Where we're at now, from the instructional side, from teaching and learning, they say, hey, we have this new learning application that's being rolled out for these schools. How can we do this? Brian steps in, says, oh, look, yep, they have these pathways. It goes through Classlink. What classes do you want? And magic, it shows up on everybody's dashboard, and it just works. And that is huge. Brian, do you want to take it from there?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, when Anu and Kate and Gil reached out and said, hey, do you want to be a part of this? I said, okay, how much time do I have? I love Classlink. Being, like I said, being a classroom teacher before, and wrestling with the index cards and little skinny strips of paper with usernames and passwords for my 30 plus students, having just posters of here's how to get to this thing and here's how to get to that thing. I could only dream of something like Classlink, roster server, Launchpad, in order to consolidate that single sign-on and rostering experience for students. So being able to be on the back end and the technical side, it's been really rewarding to kind of live out my 8-year ago fantasy of, oh, this would be so cool. This was a tool that I didn't know could exist. I was scribbling down some notes while folks were talking, and I think one of the things that really was beneficial, we got up and going with Classlink the year before COVID, in the before times, and we rolled it out pretty quickly. We didn't have our SIS data until a couple weeks before school, after the SIS rollover happened. So we were I remember being in our back to school sessions and emailing the help desk of our SIS provider saying, hey, can we get a new set of files for this? It looks like this is, so we were doing, some pretty agile work towards the end, but we got it all pulled together. And since then, we've been able to do quite a bit of learning about, okay, we rolled it out this way, but, oh, I bet we could change this up. Or as Classlink has worked with other vendors, pulling in new single sign-on partners, so new federated SSOs. Classlink has done a really good job of having, like, on our Launchpad right now is the back to school checklist. So a really handy way of, instead of my 30,000 sticky notes saying, okay, at this time in the year, check for these things. At this time in the year, check with these things. Classlink as an organization has been really supporting the people doing the work to get the most out of their system that they can. With COVID and with going remote, overnight, Classlink has given us the ability to really be rapid in our response as well. So as Gil was saying, when people would say, "Oh, I need access to these 3 things," we'd be in a staff meeting or he'd send me a chat, and by the time I could, receive the next message, I'd say, "Okay, all of these teachers have access. It's in their Launchpad. All those students are there." So being able to deploy, web apps, deploy those links, and have them be, single sign-on, was really, really great. And to be able to adapt, district-wide and not have to wrestle with some other systems like we might have to do with our mobile device management system, which can be more complicated. All of that kind of success and people using the system has given rise to new challenges. Some of our data pathways don't currently support what folks are asking. So it's on our kind of SIS side that we're working on improving, but we have people saying, "Oh, it would be really great if my EA, my whole child specialist, my other person could have access to this or have their own classrooms in the system." And we say, yes, we can do that. We just need it to be in our student information system. So our success has given us new challenges because people are using the system in ways that they hadn't wanted to before or hadn't known that they could. So it's been a way of us really enhancing what we're able to do and the things that we're able to offer. And I'm able to now go to different departments and say, "Hey, have you heard about Classlink? This is how it can help you out. Have you ever wanted to have a classroom in XYZ third-party vendor software? Well, here's how we can do that for you." So it's been really great to be able to provide that rapid rollout of apps and programs for people. Our successes have led to new challenges and new things because the system keeps getting used in new ways that we haven't had a need for before. But also it's been that Launchpad, because it's so flexible, we can use it to store here's the secondary level, middle school and high school, constantly evolving learning plan from our teaching and learning department. So we have a single place, as Federal Way said, of putting all of those resources and saying, "Oh, now everyone has access to this. Just check your Classlink, check your instructional technology folder, and all of those resources will be right there." So it's been great to just bring all of that together into one place, into, the different tools allow us to do different things and solve different problems. But it's been very fantastic. And yeah, like Gil said, I don't know how we would have done it without a lot of custom scripting, which can then be kind of fragile and less error resistant than our current systems have been.
Thank you, Brian. That's a lot of Classlink love. I'm touched. So we appreciate
Not
that.
a sponsor.
We'll write you the check later. But I think that there was a couple of interesting things just to pull it out. I love that someone came to Gil, I don't remember exactly who, and said, "Fix this problem," right? I mean, that's our favorite thing to do, is to know that there's a problem that we're being fixed, that we're helping fix. And I think what Brian talked about, there's so many people that do a little bit of a set it and forget it with Classlink, which is great, right? That's a great strength. But listening to Brian and how they've been able to integrate it, to use it as a tool, whether it's for communication or just making things easier, and kind of spreading that through your system, through your rollout, through your district. I think that's good for people to hear and know, because I don't often think about things like that. Often I'm like, let's get her stood up, as most of you know. So, okay, moving on to Highline. Okay, So I kind of made these slides up as well, since I worked very closely with Highline. But Katie, Becky, I will leave it to you. You don't have to address my bullets, but I will leave it to you to speak about your journey.
Sure, I can kick us off, and then Katie, Mark, jump in as needed. Yeah, so we started that same March COVID, everything exploded, everyone went home. Kindergartners were in tears trying to enter a 23-digit username password to get into different applications. And so our superintendent actually stumbled upon Classlink and basically was like, do this now. So we had the fortunate luxury of having Kate as our implementation specialist, and we got this up and running in, I think, a month and a half, when they usually recommend 4 to 5 months. I don't recommend it, but it is possible. And it was a huge game changer. I mean, a lot of people didn't know it was coming, but QR codes was a lifesaver. So pre-K through 3rd grade, they just hold a code up and they log in to everything they need, like boom. And that was huge. And then the other thing was, we have Windows, Macs, Chromebooks. We offer all those different platforms, which is difficult, but Classlink can work with all of them and track the data being used on all of them, which is huge. So the analytics piece, we're really excited to dive into at the end of this year with that. So those are the 2 main things that really come to mind. But in terms of our implementation, I mean, yeah, we kind of shotgunned it and just got our core apps on there. And then slowly we're adding apps as we could throughout the year and implementing features, kind of more of a phased approach. But yeah, teachers, at first they all were like, oh my gosh, another tool. How could you do this to us? And then once they got in there, it was like amazing. So we were all very, very grateful that we switched to that for fall. It wouldn't have been the same for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know about change management. Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I was just going to say, on the back end for the technical side of things, it's been incredible. It's really decreased the amount of work our data analyst has had to do in making sure all these bazillion different tools we have are set up. She knows how the data is a one-stop shop. It's been awesome. And we did do the switch over too with the OneSync at the same time. So that has made it a lot easier on that side of the house of our department too. And helped expand. We have more people now that can go in and figure out why a student can't log in or do something, where before it was just 1 or 2 people, which has been amazing.
Thanks, Katie and Becky. Okay, here's the change management piece, and I wouldn't know this if I wasn't your PM, but it seems to me that you went from students really not interacting much with, I think it was maybe their AD credentials. You have Classlink in front of Google at this point. You switched everything with OneSync. What's the other thing that you sprung on them? Or was it AD passwords? It was something with AD that was really, really different. And they took on everything at once. It wouldn't even be my recommendation, honestly, but they really, if you don't feel like it was a lot of change management, I'm even more impressed.
Yeah, for AD, we ended up switching, I believe, to just the students, student and staff employee numbers before we did names, which if anybody has done that, people get married, they get divorced, and you're constantly dealing with name changes, and it's a nightmare. So yeah, we also did that in conjunction with Classlink, because it was like, yeah, let's just do everything in a month. Yay. No, but it was good. We wanted it to have a good lift off, and that was important, a piece to it.
Well, that's terrific.
Well, and I'd like to say too, for us in our district, we have Microsoft, we have Google, we just have everything available, and students never knew about other ones. So Classlink has really made it so we can have all the icons there, and they're aware in the Launchpad of all these different tools. And really the teachers can just say, okay, we're using this, so click here. We're just getting ready to launch where the teachers can do their own, what's it called, Becky, backpack? Is that right?
Yeah,
it's my classes now. Yeah.
Yeah, we change names every now and then. Keep it fresh and exciting.
Yes. So that will bring a whole nother layer where individual teachers can really make things specific for their students in their class and what they're using for that time. So that's exciting.
And I think we had a great project team at Highline, but also high anxiety because of all of these things that were moving. And so I appreciate Highline's belief in us and sticking to it. Okay, so that was nice to everyone to learn a little bit about what's going on. I believe Anu has had some technical troubles. So are you with us, Anu? Is she gone again? Here again? All right, we'll see what happens. Doug, I'll jump in for Anu.
Okay.
And help out. Oh, she's there. Can you talk? Oh, we can't hear you. Darn it. All right. I would say switch to the next slide. We'll get started, and then Anu, you just talk whenever you can, and we'll jump in. So Anu, I'm playing Anu now. Anu, played by Kate. So I'm not going to do it as well, but Anu was very thoughtful about writing up some really good questions to help with discussions and with sharing of information. So I'm also reading this for the first time, so be patient. So Federal Way, this is geared towards you. So Tim, it's often easier at the elementary level to put into place a solution like this. In fact, we have special programs geared towards middle school and high school because that tends to be where the challenge is. By programs, I mean kind of training and webinars and things like that. So Federal Way had excellent usage across all of the levels. Can you speak to anything that you did specifically to ensure that there was good usage in the middle school and high school levels?
I think part of that comes back to when we had multiple logins in different platforms, then a lot of the middle school and high school students would just go directly there, and they would bypass the previous platform that we had. And so what we were able to do is we use Canvas, and so we were able to set up SSO directly into Classlink. So number one, they didn't have to remember another password with Canvas. And then second of all, they did have to come through Launchpad to get there. And then the other part is around the Zoom for the teachers that enabled the Zoom authentication. They did have to get authenticated through Launchpad. Most of the time they were already logged in, and so it just passed them transparently into Zoom. But for those that hadn't logged in yet that day, it was prompting them to log into Launchpad. So I think those were two of the methods we used to get a lot of those middle school and high school. And then I would also mention what Kate had mentioned. We are also Google and Microsoft. Google being our primary student platform, but more of the teachers starting to use Office 365. And so just having that visibility on the dashboard for their links to get off to those to Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint online, just those clicks got them right into that. So I think that's opening the tools up for our teachers and then giving larger visibility to our students.
Thank you, Tim. Does anyone else, have you noticed that you have a particular level that's using it more or less, or anyone that you're struggling to get in there?
For us in Corvallis, I think the one thing that's really been helpful, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, but the apps that we can get the true federated SSOs, so whether it's an OAuth app, an LTI, a SAML, like whatever that flavor is, those are the apps that we see used most often because they work really, really well platform to platform. So our kindergartners on an iPad, or the high schooler that's on their Chromebook or logging in from their personal computer, whatever that is, having those kind of single sign-on and seamless single sign-on apps has been really great. So we definitely, those vendors that support that really help to instill confidence in the system because it just works.
So anywhere where we were able to strong arm people to log into Classlink, that worked. Okay, all right. Well, I mean, there is an element of if you build it, they will come, right? Highline, have you noticed anything specific about a particular level that's higher or lower in terms of usage?
Not specifically for students. I know our next kind of push is to get more of the business offices into that, but that's also putting in those business applications. Because we did start out with just instructional, and that was the goal. But now we'd really like, just because of the seamlessness of it, is to get everybody to Launchpad for everything. So I think that's the group we're focusing on now for next year. But yeah, I don't know, Katie, if there's a particular group you've seen in terms of students, but that's our next.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really think it's dependent on the teachers that push it. You know, we always have pockets at each school of teachers who enjoy technology a little more than others and try to incorporate it into everything. And, you know, this year has just been such a different year in general. Plus we started hybrid, so we have students back in person, which has kind of changed a little bit of the usage because they're trying during their time in person to not have it so technology driven. So
yeah, everyone's got to pull back a little bit, right? Figure out what that balance is. But I think the expansion of Launchpad is an interesting concept. You know, that's something we try and tell people, but it's always good to hear it that, right, getting anyone in there can be useful. So that was
Kate. Kate, I want to go to the chat box. I want to number one, thank Tim for his comment of, and because I think it sometimes gets lost, seamless SSO improved system with less passwords and remember with fewer support calls. And I think that is something that gets lost on a lot of things of those support calls that we all experience, especially in the summertime. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then Kate, there was a question of, do we have MFA and can you roll that out by user type? You want to address that for us?
I actually will put people on the spot because that's a little bit what I do. But Becky, Katie, Highline has multi-factor authentication turned on as an optional feature for 6 through 12 and all staff. Can you speak to any success, failures, other than we're still working on a good report for you? I know, our mea culpa. But can you speak to anything that would help Susan in that space?
Sure. So we haven't required it, but that is our goal in the long term, especially a lot of insurance companies are now, we've heard that they're now starting to require that for student data privacy. So we've made it an option. We've done a lot of testing with it through Classlink. And it can be configured for subgroups. So what's nice is they have a true multi-factor where it can text you, but they also have like kind of a more simpler one for the younger kids where they select their photo, right? That's unique to them, which I like that a lot because it's much easier. It's easier for parents. You know, kids don't have an alternative device. But we haven't required it. So that's why we're waiting on those reports to see who has actually taken advantage of it. But we are excited to kind of start pushing that out, hopefully in the next year or two.
Thank you, Becky. We're seeing a lot more questions about multi-factor. It's definitely where the trend is going. My first couple of years at Classlink, I've been here 5 years. I don't think I ever spoke about it or showed anybody, and it is something that is asked about a lot now. So thank you. I'm going to aim this Anu. Let me check in. Can we hear you?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, bummer. Okay, so the next question is geared towards Corvallis, and I mentioned that I liked that whole conversation with, you know, coming to Gil and saying fix the problem, and you touched on it a little bit more. But we have a lot of technology departments that come to us and they implement Classlink, and where teaching and learning falls and where other departments falls in this relationship can be anywhere from fabulous, like family on the project team, to non-existent and potentially even a adversarial relationship. I mean, we all know that it happens. So is there anything that you can share with everybody, Gil, the things that you've done? It seems like you've done a really good job keeping teaching and learning in touch with technology.
Yeah, I think, like you said, this came first as a responsive approach, right? And very quickly there, though, what it became is this collaborative process. And a lot of the credit for this really goes to Brian and his adaptive work, integrating very closely with teaching and learning on what they're looking to see and what we can provide in terms of solutions. And often that's a great conversation back and forth right now. So it's not just this is what we can deliver, right? It's what are you looking for? What are your needs? Where do we want to get to? And Brian will come with, well, here's some ways that we can do this within Classlink. And then they'll come back and say, well, that sounds great, but we want to add our librarians in there too. How can we do that? And I think that's the most, the important piece of our success is Brian's regular meetings with our teaching and learning coordinators and our instructional technology coaches on what are you looking for, what do you want to see, and how can we support that in the process. And now we're at the point where it's at curriculum adoption. We're considering these 4 different curriculum options for social studies, and they all have an online component. And Brian steps in and says, okay, well, let's add the consideration of access and engagement here. Here are your different options so that we know what we're going to get when we roll out the door. Brian, do you want to say more about that process?
Yeah, I think, and it's been an organic learning opportunity for me, and then as well as our teaching and learning department. Before Classlink, it was mostly she's our assessment coordinator, but she's the one who knows her way around our student information system. So she would get to be the one to go in and pull class lists for things, send them to teachers and vendors. So she was just getting overwhelmed with those things. But now we've been able to kind of take that over and say, all right, we can provide as many groups for you as our student information system supports. That's great. So give us your pie in the sky vision. We'll tell you, hey, here's the systems that we have to support that. And then we kind of work towards the middle. One thing we've been really working on is kind of defining kind of roles and responsibilities with some of these new integrations and rollouts so that we know, okay, Brian, in the technology department, am going to handle the talking with the technical consultant, finding out our single sign-on pathway, finding out, which teachers and groups are going to be inside the app. I need you, the teaching and learning department, to handle the licensing. So how many seats do we have? Where are those assigned? We'll often work with a technical TOSA, teacher on special assignment, in order to do some of that because they're a little bit more in touch with what the teachers are doing and what their needs are. They're kind of our liaison with the teachers. So I work very closely with them to, depending on the system and how their licensing is set up, maybe they'll go in and assign licenses at the course level, or maybe it's all handled at the vendor level. So per vendor, per integration, we kind of go through and really kind of outline what those different roles and responsibilities are to make sure that we all kind of know what we're doing in order to make it successful. And then lots of meetings about meetings and being able to kind of forecast, hey, this is something we ran into last year. It's May now. We dealt with it in August last year. Would we like to try something different or have a longer timeline?
So even following up with the needs assessment, Tim, I know that you wrote something in the chat, but you want to speak to it? It's just an important topic.
Yeah, I mentioned just we get daily requests. Can we add this? Can we add this? And and I know there's a lot of great resources out there, but they're not all set for school districts and privacy and which ones need standalone accounts and which ones need rostering. And so we do have an application approval process through our instructional technology team. That technology is also a voice with. And so that's what's kind of helped us stay focused this year, because we could spend hours in multiple directions adding lots of things that we shouldn't have. And so it's great to have that partnership moving forward.
That's excellent. So you're involved in the approval process as well. And I think the roles and responsibilities, I see a lot of tugging on, well, who owns the product? Well, we own the tech part, but we own this part. Highline, anything to share that's going well or you're trying to improve in Highline with communication between teaching and learning and tech?
Yeah, so we have a digital tool review committee that partners with communications, IT, and teaching and learning. And they vet all apps. They make the decision on what's rostering, what's not. And so they kind of take care of that. And we're on that committee as well. But they make those decisions, and then we just basically do what they tell us to make those available, right? So so for us, it's nice that we have that committee to make those decisions so we're not playing a guessing game.
That is nice. Sounds like you guys all have good partnerships. You don't know how lucky you are, stories for when we're back at Mount Hood. Okay. Analytics. So actually, it's funny. I was going to ask Highline specifically to talk about MFA and password reset, but Susan did that for me. So I'll put it out to the group. You know that a lot of districts come to us and analytics is the tipping point, or they really want to utilize their analytics. We have different districts with different approaches to give anyone and everyone access to analytics, to keep it really kind of tight and close to the vest for now. Can you guys share anything that you're doing with analytics, or you want analytics to do? I don't want to quite get into a full feature request conversation, but what doesn't it do that you want it to do? I'm going to open the floor to anyone who wants to speak in the analytics category.
I'll go ahead and step in from Corvallis. I'll say first, just your responsiveness on analytics is huge. We really appreciate that. I can't remember which conference it was, and maybe it was a few years ago, and Burge presented first on the initial analytics stuff coming. And he basically said, we hear you asking for it and we're going to deliver. And now we're at, analytics 2.0 or analytics plus, looking at the application level of what's happening, which is really awesome. I would say for me, that's like my big vision. I want to be able to inform our direction around instruction with analytics to inform that process. And I will, and what Classlink's delivering right now is great. And the next level of getting down to, okay, what applications are being used is really great. We see it all over, in different systems, but to have it built right into our core system is great. I would also see what I'm finding right now is the available bandwidth for that is very small. Right now, our bandwidth is around, how are we going to sail the ship out of the harbor with the new plan that just came out last week. So it's on the horizon. It's something we want to get out there, and I'm interested to hear from others how it's being leveraged, because that's something I'd like to see leveraged more, and try to see how we're going to get to see the why and the need behind it and the worthwhileness of putting the energy towards it.
So to make sure I understand, by bandwidth, you mean how much time you or anyone else has to look at the analytics, right?
Yeah. You think about a building principal right now and the things that they're dealing with, right?
Yeah, it's funny. We have a new program too that has so much data, but I don't have time to look at it. So Highliner.
I think that's a bigger conversation around bandwidth to absorb very useful data. Like I found this early on working with learning applications in classrooms with teachers. And I said, wow, look at this application that you're doing to do math. And it has this great analytics that'll tell you where your kids are at, so you know what to do tomorrow. And they're like, how am I going to have time to do that? Right. And this new concept has come up of a coach who really is that instructional coach who understands the use of data in the classroom. And they're working alongside teachers for that. And it's an interesting one. We're not there yet, but it's the direction we're definitely going.
Moving to that. Highliner Federal Way, do you have anything you want to share, either to speak to Gil's particular question of kind of bandwidth and sharing of analytics, or anything on your own?
Yeah, I'll echo just the amount of things that our school administrators are already handling. Our current decision when we launched last fall was to we gave analytics to our teaching for learning staff and to our cabinet members, but we have not rolled that out to school administrators yet. So that's on our roadmap. And so I think it's being used at a district level, looking at usage and very high level, but not yet at the school level.
And Tim, are you hearing any requests for it? Are there some admins out there that are thirsty for this information?
We've had a couple, I'd say a few people have asked, and so we've given some targeted reports, but not across the board yet.
What's the hesitancy to share the analytics? Is it what they're going to do with the data? What is it?
Sorry, Mark. I was going to say, I think for us, we wanted to make sure we really understood it and knew what it was telling, and I had some of those conversations with you, Kate, on trying to make sure we just really understood it. We had those login timeframes really down and had some meaning to them, because otherwise, if you don't have those login times right, a student could easily stay logged in for longer than possible if you didn't have your timeouts set, and it would mean something different, that it looked like the student was doing things. Mark, was there something else you were going to say about it? Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh my goodness, Mark and Anu. Another, I don't even know, Aaron.
I have a follow-up to that for Katie and Becky, because Becky, you mentioned a little earlier in the session that there's something you guys wanted to dig into next year. Is there something specific that you're going to be looking for? And I know you just mentioned you worked with Kate, you want to know what you're looking at, but are there 2 or 3 things that you're saying, I really want to focus in on this particular piece of information, or this is what we're trying to utilize these for? Have you got to that point yet?
I would say no, mostly because, we've ended up focusing so much on our hybrid implementation and bringing students back that it keeps pushing down. And I know some of our teachers, like I think it was Tim was saying that they are using it to try to gauge attendance, because right now we're saying any evidence of them logging in and doing something in an application can be counted for attendance now. And so I know there is a lot of teachers that go and look at it, because we do have it open for them, but just the big broad, we just haven't had a chance to dive into it to really know what we want out of it yet.
Yeah, I will say I
don't have the time for training of people and how to really use it and make sure they understand what they're looking at as well.
Side note, Classlink will help you with that. Okay, go on. Just a thing. Just a thing. I think Becky and Mark were trying to talk. I don't know, Mark.
Okay, sure. Though I was going to say, the one thing I'm selfishly looking forward to is being able to input how much we pay for a product and seeing that usage across the board. So we've input that data, but we've yet to sit down and sift through it.
Oh, hey, step 1, check, right? You have to do the first step before you can move on. All right, so it looks like Mark's talking, but I can't hear him. Gil, all right, have we lost your audio?
No, I'm good, but I think we may have lost Mark's. I have something to add for what we're looking for from analytics, but I want to see if it sounded like Mark had something to say, and I want to offer the stage to him. And maybe if you can do sign, Mark.
If you want, I guess the floor is yours, Gil. We're all used to rolling with technology now.
Okay, I'm going to roll, and Mark, you just step in when you got it working. The big piece for me, and this is something I've been talking with Brian about for the new round of analytics with Classlink, is so we use iPads in our K through 8, Chromebooks 9 through 12, and we're starting to look at the middle school, how are we using iPads, and are we fully leveraging that environment, right, around the creativity and education? And what I'd love to be able to know is like, what apps are they using and how much, right? Are they using the Apple apps that are on there? Because we're very much a Google district. We use, the Google Suite is our primary suite that we're using. We know students have been using that a lot. So we want to look at, are they using that more on the iPad, or are they using the Apple apps over here? Because we're looking at implementing some areas of the Apple ecosystem, managed Apple IDs, and et cetera. We want to make sure that that's the direction we need to go, because we're starting to have conversations about what direction our middle school is going to take in terms of the device they're going to use and the ecosystem they're in. And my understanding from the new analytics is it has to see a call out to the web to know that something's being used. And maybe, Kate, you can share a little bit more insight on that.
So I definitely don't want to turn this into, well, part of me does, but I'm not going to turn this into an Analytics Plus conversation. But it is a new product, if you haven't heard about it, that's scheduled to drop July 1st, and it will capture data that's happening outside of Launchpad. Our analytics is restrictive to what you click inside of Launchpad. And yes, Bill, early action on this knowledge. It is supposed to capture all of the native app usage on iPads, as well as Safari or browser usage on the iPads. So I know that is notoriously a blind spot for iPad users. So I'm guessing Anu should have more conversations with you about that.
Well, we have been having conversations with Anu, and this is my big piece. And Don Wolf said it's going to be awesome, so I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So.
Are we taking Don Wolf's word for things right now? Is that what's going on? No.
Yeah, Don says it. It's the truth, right?
I'm with you. He will lead.
And if not, we can say it's all Don's fault.
I just love being able to harass him while he can't talk back. Okay. All right. One final question. We're getting towards the end. We like this. We like to be able to learn something as well as we're going through this. So the last question, I think Doug had it on a slide. Let me see. It's essentially, if you knew then what you know now, what would you do? What would you do differently? Or what would you suggest we do differently to help you do that differently? If you want me to call on people, I will. Or you can step forward.
I will speak to that. I wish we had, and maybe it was just more we did our implementation too quick. I wish we'd had time to really work with the vendors to understand what columns out of the system data we were giving them they were really truly going to pull from Classlink, because we have some where it was pulling internal section IDs or student IDs, not the real ones for the students. But because it was just such a rush, and we knew if we changed things, it would have changed all applications. We have just gone with it this year, and we explained to people, new system, quick implementation. We have it on the list to correct for next year. So really just diving in and making sure you understand what the vendors are doing with the data they're receiving from Classlink is something we would have done differently.
If I remember an example, or why don't I ask you, why don't you give a contextual example so that everyone knows what you mean?
Seesaw is pulling a weird, it's some external ID, not our section number, or I can't think of an exact example now.
It's the source ID. They were using the source ID, and that's actually what was showing in the platform, right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's really confusing to the teachers, and it's caused a lot of extra work on the schools because they go in and rename it. So that's definitely something we want to change for next year. We just, knowing everything was remote, we did not want to do something that could jeopardize the kids being in the classes to make that change, to see if we could fix it on the fly. That's why we just explained to our staff, next year, please, we're sorry.
Hang in there.
Yep. Yeah. And it was hard on us because it wasn't all of them. It wasn't all the tools. And that's where we really are being intentional this year and taking that time to document what each digital tool pulls from Classlink to make sure we know, and it's now a question we want an answer for as we implement new ones.
I wonder if we could even gather some of that data. All right.
We're happy to share it with you too as we find it out for existing ones. Yeah, because it'd be a huge help to people implementing.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you. I can see Brian's just jumping out of his skin, but I don't know if it's well, you tell us. Are you going to share something different, or you want to speak to also Katie, what Katie was saying?
Just around lessons learned.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and a big shout out to our student information system provider, LBL Lincoln ESD. We work really, really closely with them, and a lot of what I do is kind of what Becky does, translating what our stakeholders need into technical speak, talk with our nerds over there, and then translate that back and forth. So about that, all of this integration work that we're doing, that profound and deep knowledge of what our student information system data looks like, and being able to work with them to provide the data in the way that we're expecting is very, very key. That, and then I spoke a little bit earlier about yearly planning. So, hey, we want to roster our library technicians. We want to be able to give them a Seesaw or a Google Classroom in the fall. What does that look like? Well, we need to kind of backwards plan that, say, talk with our assistant superintendent, talk with our teaching and learning, talk with our OMs and registrars to make sure that we have all of the pieces in place for that to happen. Otherwise, that additional, one-time lift in the beginning of the year, that may not be able to happen. So having a really, really tight relationship with your SIS team, as well as proactive yearly planning, is, I think, something that was really, really helpful. We're finding that we're using data that we had in a new way that hadn't been used. Like our email address that was in our SIS, it didn't go anywhere before, but now that is so key, and it needs to match what's in Google in order to authenticate. So,
all right, now I'm going to shut you down. Once you start going through technical workflows, what I don't know about this program is if it's going to us at quarter after. But Tim, I still want to hear from you. If you knew that, you know now.
I'm going to jump in since Mark can't speak. He's actually going to do the countdown in about 1 minute to close the session.
Tell him I get till quarter after.
Quarter after. All right. We'll give you.
Tim, go ahead.
No, I think right now we're still working with some vendors for rostering. We went to switch over several vendors last August, and they said, "Oh, we only roster through Clever," and so we ended up keeping Clever in the background and just passing through from Launchpad, but hoping to get rid of those this summer. So we're working with some vendors now, and I think that's just an ongoing task from here on out.
Okay, thank you. That's really good to know. Plan B, right? That's what I affectionately call that. You always have to have a plan B. So I am getting cut off early. Doug, I'm sure you were going to wrap up, so I will let you go.
Yep. I'll try to share my screen one more time. I keep getting kicked off. So Mark, Katie, Becky, Tim, Gil, and Brian, we on behalf of the Classlink team, we can't thank you enough for participating in today's session. I think the insight was invaluable, and thank you so much for taking part in this. I'd like to thank the attendees on the session as well for their comments. And I've got our contact information up here if you need to get a hold of us. As you can see, Kate runs the show for us. And from our implementation perspective, a new, unfortunately, we didn't get to hear from her, but those of you that know her well know that she is awesome to work with, and she helps make your implementation the best it possibly can. And anything else, you can just get in touch with me. So thank you so much. We appreciate the 75 minutes here today, and have a great rest of the day and the rest of the conference. So thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.